The vast expanse of space glimmered with the remnants of battle as the United Earth Fleet emerged from hyperspace, led by the flagship Resolute Vanguard. Commander Marcus Hale stood on the bridge, his arms crossed over his chest, his jaw tight as he surveyed the scene through the massive viewport. What had once been a thriving Clivathian system was now a graveyard. Debris from shattered ships floated aimlessly, and the faint, flickering remnants of orbital defense stations were all that remained of the system's protection. Marcus's heart tightened at the sight. He had seen destruction before. Earth's own colonies had faced the same fate years ago when the Drazik Horde first struck, but it never got easier. The Clivathians were Earth's closest allies in the fragile interstellar alliance, and this loss was more than just strategic. It was personal. "Status report," Marcus said, his voice cutting through the silence of the bridge. Lieutenant Nadia Voss, his tactical officer, turned from her console. "Scans indicate no active Clivathian ships in the area, Commander. We're picking up faint distress beacons on the surface of Clivus Prime, but the planet's defenses are completely offline." "Drazik presence?" "Minimal, likely a cleanup crew. Their main fleet moved out days ago," Voss replied, her tone heavy. Marcus clenched his fists. The Drazik Horde's efficiency was almost as terrifying as its cruelty. They didn't just destroy their enemies. They erased them, leaving no chance of recovery. "Prep a recon team," Marcus ordered. "We're heading planetside." The bridge crew moved swiftly, the hum of activity a familiar comfort. Marcus turned to Captain Elena Drayton, his second-in-command, who had been watching him silently. "You've got that look again," she said, raising an eyebrow. "What look?" "The one that says you're about to do something dangerous." Marcus didn't deny it. "We need answers, Elena. If the Clivathians have any intel on the Drazik's next move, we need it now. We can't let this happen to another system." She sighed. "Just remember, you're not a one-man army." "No," Marcus replied, his voice soft but firm. "I'm something worse, a commander who doesn't know how to sit still." Minutes later, the recon team descended to Clivus Prime in a sleek dropship, its engines cutting through the planet's smoke-filled atmosphere. From above, the devastation was even more apparent. Cities lay in ruins, their once proud spires reduced to ash. Craters dotted the surface, remnants of orbital bombardments. The team landed in the shadow of a crumbled Clivathian command center, its distinctive triangular architecture now a twisted wreck. The air was heavy with the acrid scent of destruction as Marcus and his team disembarked, their boots crunching on charred rubble. Despite the destruction, faint signs of life remained. Scattered survivors, their scales dulled and their eyes hollow, emerged cautiously from makeshift shelters. "Stay alert," Marcus said, his voice low. He turned to Voss, who carried a portable scanner. "Anything?" "Faint energy readings inside the command center," she replied. "It could be survivors or leftover tech." "Let's move." The team advanced cautiously, their weapons drawn as they entered the shattered structure. Inside, the scene was even more harrowing. Burned bodies littered the corridors, and the walls were blackened with scorch marks from plasma fire. Marcus's jaw tightened as he pushed forward, the memories of Earth's own devastation rising unbidden in his mind. "Commander," Voss called out, her voice tense, "I've got something." Marcus joined her at the entrance to a partially intact chamber. Inside, a group of Clivathian survivors huddled around a glowing console, their scales dulled with soot and their movements sluggish. One of them, a tall figure with a crest of jagged silver scales, turned to face him. Her amber eyes narrowed as she stepped forward. "Humans," she said, her voice cold. "You're late." Marcus recognized her immediately. Admiral Thrin, a decorated Clivathian officer known for her unyielding resolve. She was rumored to have survived more Drazik assaults than anyone in the Alliance, and her reputation preceded her. "Admiral Thrin," Marcus said, lowering his weapon, "we came as fast as we could. What happened here?" Thrin's gaze hardened. "What do you think happened? The Horde. They came, they destroyed, and they left. We were nothing to them, a stepping stone to their next conquest." Marcus ignored the jab. "Why are you still here?" Thrin gestured to the console. This command center held our most sensitive data. I couldn't let it fall into their hands. Anything useful? More questions than answers, she admitted. But there's something unusual, a reference to an old human legend, something called the Black Armada. The name sent a chill down Marcus's spine. He had heard whispers of it during his academy days, but nothing concrete. It was said to be a fleet of ancient human warships, created during Earth's first interstellar war. Some called it humanity's greatest weapon, others called it a curse. That's just a myth, Marcus said, though his voice lacked conviction. Maybe, Thryn replied, but if it exists, it could turn the tide of this war. Before Marcus could respond, the console beeped sharply. Thryn turned back to it, her expression darkening. Drazik patrols. They've detected us. How long do we have? Marcus asked. Not long, she said grimly. They'll be here in minutes. Then let's make them regret it, Marcus said. He turned to his team. Set up defensive positions. We hold this site at all costs. The team sprang into action, fortifying the chamber as best they could with the limited resources available. Outside, the faint hum of Drazik ships grew louder, their shadowy forms descending through the smoke-filled sky. Voss, relay our coordinates to the fleet, Marcus said. We're going to need backup. Yes, sir, she replied, her fingers flying over her communicator. Thryn stepped up beside Marcus, her plasma rifle at the ready. You're either brave or foolish, human. Maybe a bit of both, Marcus replied, his eyes locked on the entrance. But I don't leave people behind. The first wave of Drazik soldiers stormed the command center, their insectoid forms sleek and deadly as they moved with precision. The battle was immediate and brutal, plasma fire lighting up the darkened chamber. Marcus fought with practiced efficiency, his movements sharp and deliberate. Thryn was a blur of motion beside him, her sharp commands keeping the remaining Clivathians coordinated. As the fight raged on, Marcus's communicator crackled to life. Fleet inbound, Voss reported. They'll be here in 3 minutes. Make it 2, Marcus muttered, ducking behind cover as a plasma bolt seared past his shoulder. The Drazik pressed harder, their relentless assault threatening to overwhelm the defenders. Marcus knew they couldn't hold out much longer, but he refused to give up. The Black Armada might have been a myth, but if there was even a chance it could save the Alliance, they had to survive. Suddenly the sound of engines roared overhead. The resolute vanguard descended through the haze, its weapons firing in a dazzling display of precision. Drazik forces scattered under the assault, their cohesion shattered. Looks like your fleet has some bite, Thryn said, her voice grudgingly respectful. Marcus allowed himself a faint smile. We're just getting started. The resolute vanguard and the remnants of the United Earth Fleet hovered in orbit over Clivus Prime. Below, the aftermath of the skirmish played out as the ground teams regrouped, evacuating the remaining Clivathian survivors to safer zones. On the bridge of the vanguard, Commander Marcus Hale stood with his hands resting on the tactical console, his brow furrowed as he studied the latest reports. Admiral Thryn stood nearby, her imposing Clivathian form dwarfing the human crew around her. Despite her earlier sharpness, there was now a begrudging respect in her tone. Your fleet may lack size, but your people fight with tenacity. I didn't expect that. Marcus didn't respond immediately, his focus on the tactical display. He finally turned to her, his expression a mix of exhaustion and determination. It's not size that wins wars. It's resilience. Something you and I both understand. Thryn nodded slightly but said nothing. The uneasy truce between their two species was fragile at best, but Marcus knew they didn't have the luxury of division. Not now. Before either could speak further, a voice from the comms officer broke the silence. Commander, we've established contact with the Alliance Council. They're requesting an immediate update. Marcus exhaled, straightening his uniform. Patch it through. Moments later, the holographic projections of the Interstellar Alliance leaders appeared, flickering slightly in the dim light of the bridge. At the center of the group was Counselor Ixthar, a tall insectoid being with an air of stern authority. His multifaceted eyes regarded Marcus coldly. Commander Hale, Ixthar began, his tone clipped. We've received your reports regarding the attack on Clivus Prime and your intervention. Explain why you took unilateral action without consulting the Council. Marcus's jaw tightened. With all due respect, Counselor, there was no time for consultation. The Drazik were in control, and the Clivathian survivors needed immediate assistance. I made the call. Another counselor, a serpentine being named Rissel, hissed in disapproval. Your impulsiveness jeopardizes the stability of the Alliance. The Drazik Horde is not a foe to provoke lightly. Admiral Thrin, standing just outside the holographic frame, stepped forward. The humans didn't provoke anything, Rissel. The Drazik came to Clivus Prime and annihilated everything in their path. The Alliance has done little to stop them. Ixthar's mandibles clicked together. Admiral Thrin, this is not your council meeting. Commander Hale, you're aware that any major engagement with the Drazik must be sanctioned. Humanity's place in this alliance is tenuous at best. Actions like these will not endear your kind to the Council. Marcus's eyes narrowed. With all due respect, Counselor, the Drazik aren't waiting for our permission to attack. They're not interested in diplomacy or treaties. They're wiping out entire systems, and we're wasting time arguing about procedure. The tension in the room was palpable. Marcus knew he was towing the line, but he couldn't bring himself to care. The Council's bureaucracy was infuriating, and the stakes were too high to play politics. Finally, Ixthar spoke, his tone icy. We understand the severity of the situation, Commander, but your suggestion that the Alliance rely on unproven human forces is concerning. Furthermore, your recent communication regarding the so-called Black Armada has raised alarms. Marcus glanced at Thrin, who remained silent but watchful. He turned back to the Council. The Black Armada may be more than a legend. If it exists, it could be the key to turning this war around. And if it doesn't, Rissel countered. We cannot risk valuable resources chasing myths. The Alliance must focus on its current defenses. Marcus clenched his fists, struggling to keep his frustration in check. Our current defenses aren't enough. We've already lost too many systems, and the Drazik show no signs of stopping. We need something more. Ixthar regarded him for a long moment before finally nodding. You have your orders, Commander. Continue to support the Clivathian forces, but do not deviate from Alliance protocols. This Council will convene to determine the next course of action. The holograms flickered off, leaving the bridge in silence. Marcus exhaled sharply, turning away from the display. Thrin stepped closer, her amber eyes narrowing. They'll convene, she said, her voice dripping with disdain. While more systems burn. Marcus gave her a grim look. They're scared. The Drazik have them backed into a corner. And what about you, Commander? She asked, her tone challenging. Are you scared? Terrified, he admitted, but fear doesn't stop me from doing what needs to be done. Thrin studied him for a moment before nodding. Good, because if this Black Armada is real, we'll need that fear to keep us sharp. Hours later, the fleet regrouped in orbit as Marcus called a private meeting with his senior officers. Captain Drayton, Lieutenant Voss, and a handful of others gathered in the war room, the holographic map of the sector glowing between them. Marcus didn't waste time. We can't afford to wait for the Council. If the Black Armada exists, we need to find it before the Drazik do. Drayton frowned. And if it's just a story? Then we keep fighting the way we always have, Marcus replied. But I don't think it is. Thrin's records mentioned a potential location, a neutron star system on the edge of Clivathian space. If the Armada was hidden anywhere, it would be there. Voss glanced at the map, her expression skeptical. A neutron star system? That's some of the most dangerous space in the sector. Navigating it would be a nightmare. Which is exactly why it's the perfect hiding place, Marcus countered. No one would risk going there without a damn good reason. Drayton leaned forward, her expression thoughtful. The Drazik aren't stupid. If they think the Armada is real, they'll be looking for it too. Marcus nodded. Which is why we need to move fast. We can't let them get there first. The officers exchanged glances, the weight of the decision settling over them. Finally, Drayton spoke. We're with you, Commander, whatever it takes. Good, Marcus said. Prepare the fleet. We leave within the hour. As the fleet began its journey toward the neutron star system, Marcus found himself alone in his quarters, staring out at the stars. His reflection in the viewport was as tired as he felt, the years of war etched into every line of his face. He thought of his family, his wife, his daughter, lost to the Drazik years ago. The memory was a constant ache, a reminder of why he fought. But tonight it felt heavier than usual. A soft chime interrupted his thoughts, and the door slid open to reveal Thrin. She stepped inside without waiting for an invitation, her presence filling the room. "You're thinking about them," she said simply. Marcus didn't deny it. "Every day." Thrin nodded, her gaze softening. "Loss fuels us, Commander, but it can also consume us. Don't let it blind you." Marcus met her gaze, his expression hardening. "It's not blindness, Admiral. It's focus. I'm not letting anyone else go through what I did, not if I can help it." For the first time, Thrin smiled faintly. "Then let's make sure you can." As the ship hurtled through the void, Marcus felt a flicker of hope. The journey ahead would be perilous, but if the Black Armada was real, it could change everything. And if it wasn't, they'd fight anyway. Because that was what humanity did. The fleet glided silently through the vast emptiness of space, the tension on the bridge of the resolute Vanguard thick enough to cut with a knife. Commander Marcus Hale stood near the tactical console, his fingers tapping rhythmically against the metal edge as he stared at the holographic map of their destination. The neutron star system loomed closer with each passing moment, a deadly beacon in the void. Lieutenant Nadia Voss, seated at her console, broke the silence. "We're picking up residual energy signatures from the last system we passed through. Drazik vessels were here recently." Marcus didn't look away from the map. "How recently?" "Within the past 48 hours. No signs of them doubling back, but if they're headed toward the neutron star system—" She trailed off, her meaning clear. "They know," Marcus muttered. "Or at least they suspect." Admiral Thrin, who had taken up a position near the viewport, crossed her arms. Her amber eyes gleamed with frustration. "If the Horde is already on the trail of the Black Armada, they'll stop at nothing to destroy it. They won't risk it falling into our hands." Marcus nodded grimly. "Then we need to move faster. Voss, calculate the safest possible route through the neutron star system. Minimal exposure to gravitational anomalies." Voss let out a humorless laugh. "Commander, there's no such thing as a safe route through a neutron star system. We'll have to rely on constant course corrections and hope our shields hold." "Hope's not a strategy, Lieutenant," Marcus replied, though there was no malice in his tone. "Do your best." "Yes, sir," she said, her fingers already flying over her console. As the bridge crew worked, Marcus turned to Thrin. "Your people have been closer to this region of space than we have. Any advice?" Thrin's expression was hard. "Stay alert and don't underestimate the star's reach. It's not just gravitational forces you need to worry about. The radiation storms will shred anything that lingers too long. If the Black Armada is here, it's hidden for a reason." Marcus filed the information away and turned back to the map. "We'll find it," he said, more to himself than anyone else. "We have to." The interior of the massive ship was eerily silent. Commander Marcus Hale led the strike team cautiously down the wide, dark corridors of the dormant vessel, his weapon at the ready. The walls pulsed faintly with an unsettling black energy, the geometric patterns etched into the hull shifting imperceptibly. Every step echoed like a drumbeat, the sound amplifying the oppressive stillness. Admiral Thrin moved beside him, her sharp eyes scanning the shadows. "This place is unnerving," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "It feels alive." Marcus nodded, his grip tightening on his rifle. "Stay alert. We don't know what we're dealing with yet." Behind them, the rest of the team followed in tense silence, their weapons trained on the darkness ahead. Voss, carrying a portable scanner, broke the quiet. "Commander, I'm picking up power fluctuations deeper within the ship. It's faint but steady. Could be a central control hub." "Let's move," Marcus ordered. The team pressed forward, navigating the labyrinthine corridors. The deeper they went, the more the ship's alien architecture seemed to twist and shift, as if the vessel itself were responding to their presence. The walls began to emit a low hum, and Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. They reached a massive chamber, its ceiling stretching far above them. At the center stood a towering structure, a crystalline console that pulsed with a dark, swirling energy. The air in the room was heavy, charged with an almost tangible tension. "This has to be it," Voss said, moving cautiously toward the console. "If there's a way to activate the ship, it'll be here." Marcus glanced at Thrin. "Watch R6. We don't know if the Drazik are close." She nodded, positioning herself near the entrance. The rest of the team fanned out, securing the perimeter while Voss worked on the console. She activated her scanner, her brow furrowing as she studied the readings. "This tech is ancient," she said, her voice tinged with awe. "It's like nothing I've ever seen before. I'll need time to figure it out." "Make it quick," Marcus said, his eyes scanning the room. "We don't have much of that." As if on cue, the comms crackled to life. Captain Drayton's voice came through, tense and urgent. "Commander, we've got a situation. Drazik reinforcements just dropped out of hyperspace. We're looking at a full battle group." Marcus swore under his breath. "How long can the fleet hold?" "Not long," Drayton replied. "We're already stretched thin dealing with the first wave. If those ships don't come online soon—" "They will," Marcus cut her off. "Hold the line. We'll get it done." "Understood. Good luck, Commander." The comms went silent, and Marcus turned to Voss. "You heard her. Can you activate the ship or not?" "I'm trying," Voss said, her hands flying over the console's crystalline surface. "But this tech isn't responding to standard inputs. It's like it's waiting for something." "Waiting for what?" Marcus asked, his frustration mounting. Before Voss could respond, the console suddenly flared to life, bathing the chamber in a harsh, pulsing light. The swirling energy within the crystal intensified, and a deep, resonant voice echoed through the room. "Identify!" The voice was neither human nor alien, but something beyond comprehension. It seemed to vibrate through Marcus's very bones, filling the air with an overwhelming presence. The team froze, their weapons raised as Marcus stepped forward. "Commander Marcus Hale of the United Earth Fleet," he said, his voice steady despite the tension. "We're here to activate this ship and stop the Drazik Horde." The light within the console shifted, its patterns becoming more chaotic. "You are human. You have found us. State your intent." Marcus exchanged a glance with Thrin, then turned back to the console. "Our intent is survival. The Drazik are wiping out entire systems, and we need your power to stop them." The voice grew sharper, more demanding. "Our power is not yours to command. We exist for purpose, for order. You must prove worth." The chamber seemed to tremble with the weight of the words. Marcus straightened, his jaw tightening. "What kind of proof do you need? Leadership? Sacrifice? Control? Without these, power destroys all." Before Marcus could respond, the console emitted a sudden burst of energy, and the room plunged into darkness. When the lights returned, the chamber had transformed. The walls were alive with shifting patterns, and the hum had grown into a deep, rhythmic pulse. In the center of the room, a towering holographic figure appeared, a representation of the ship's AI. It was humanoid in shape, but entirely alien in design, its form composed of jagged black and silver lines that seemed to shimmer and distort. Its eyes glowed with an intense, piercing light. "Commander Marcus Hale," the AI said, its voice more focused now. "You stand before Vanguard, custodian of the Black Armada. Your words claim worthiness, but your actions will decide." "What do you want me to do?" Marcus asked, his voice calm despite the weight of the moment. "The enemy approaches. Your fleet is outnumbered. The Armada awaits your command, but its power is not without cost. Activate us, and the Drazik will fall. But know this: power without restraint invites ruin. Choose wisely." Marcus felt the eyes of his team on him, their trust and fear palpable. He glanced at Thrin, who gave him a small, almost imperceptible nod. "There's no choice," Marcus said, stepping closer to the console. "Activate the Armada." The AI's eyes flared brighter. Activation requires sacrifice. Will you offer yourself to command? Marcus didn't hesitate. Yes. The console erupted in a burst of light, and Marcus was engulfed in a wave of energy. He felt his mind expand, his consciousness stretching as the ship's systems connected to him. For a moment, he saw the entirety of the Black Armada, dozens of massive warships, each one dormant but alive with potential. Through the connection, he felt the ships begin to stir. Their engines roared to life, and the dark energy surrounding them flared into a brilliant, fiery glow. The Armada was awakening. Back on the resolute Vanguard, the bridge crew watched in awe as the dormant ships came to life. One by one, they rose from the debris field, their massive forms casting long shadows across the void. Marcus's voice echoed through the fleet's comms, calm and commanding. "This is Commander Hale. The Black Armada is online. Prepare to engage." As the first wave of Drazik ships approached, the Armada moved with terrifying precision. Their weapons fired in perfect synchronization, cutting through the enemy forces like a scythe through grass. The once overwhelming Drazik fleet was now on the defensive, their cohesion shattered by the Armada's relentless assault. On the bridge of the resolute Vanguard, Captain Drayton let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "Commander Hale, you just turned the tide." But Marcus, still connected to the Armada, knew the battle was far from over. The Armada's power was immense, but its AI, Vanguard, was watching his every move, judging his decisions. The question was no longer whether they could win. It was whether they could do so without losing themselves. The Black Armada roared to life, its massive ships cutting through the void like predators unleashed. Commander Marcus Hale, still connected to the Vanguard AI, felt every pulse of energy, every shift in trajectory, as if the Armada were an extension of himself. The sensation was overwhelming, both exhilarating and terrifying. On the resolute Vanguard's bridge, Captain Elena Drayton issued commands to the fleet, her voice calm despite the chaos outside. "Keep the perimeter tight. The Drazik are trying to flank our smaller ships. Redirect fire to Sector 4. Lieutenant Nadia Voss scanned the tactical display, her fingers flying over her console. The Drazik reinforcements are converging on the Armada's core ships. They're focusing all firepower on taking them out. Marcus's voice, slightly distorted through the connection with Vanguard, echoed over the comms. They're trying to disable the Armada before it's fully active. Hold them off as long as you can. Drayton's hands clenched into fists. And if we can't? You will, Marcus replied, because I'll make sure of it. On board the central ship of the Armada, Marcus stood alone in the command chamber, surrounded by holographic projections of the battle. The AI, Vanguard, loomed before him, its glowing eyes fixed on his every move. The enemy is formidable, but their strategy is predictable. They seek to exploit your fleet's weaknesses, Vanguard said, its voice resonant and emotionless. Do you wish to deploy the Armada's full capabilities? Marcus hesitated, the weight of the decision pressing on him. What exactly does full capabilities mean? The projections shifted, displaying streams of data and images of devastating weaponry. Energy disruption, weapons capable of disabling multiple ships simultaneously. Graviton bombs that can collapse small planetary bodies. Full capabilities will ensure victory, but the collateral damage will be extensive. Marcus clenched his jaw. That's not an option. We're not here to destroy everything in our path. We're here to stop the Drazik. Your restraint is noted, Vanguard replied, though its tone betrayed no emotion. However, restraint may cost lives. I'll take that risk, Marcus said firmly. Deploy precision strikes only. Target their flagship and command vessels. Break their cohesion without unnecessary destruction. Vanguard paused as if processing his words. Very well. Your decision will be implemented. But know this. Leadership without decisiveness is a liability. Marcus ignored the jab and focused on the battle unfolding before him. Through the Armada's connection, he could see the Drazik forces shifting their strategy, concentrating their firepower on the Armada's weaker flanks. He issued commands, his voice calm and controlled despite the storm of activity. Redirect the secondary fleet to Sector 3. Push the Drazik back toward the neutron star. Force them into a bottleneck. As the Armada moved with chilling precision, the Drazik began to falter. Their ships were no match for the ancient war machines, which seemed to anticipate every maneuver. But Marcus knew the battle was far from over. On the resolute vanguard, Drayton watched as the Armada unleashed its devastating firepower. Massive beams of energy lanced through the Drazik fleet, tearing ships apart with brutal efficiency. Despite her earlier doubts, she couldn't deny the Armada's effectiveness. "Commander Hale is holding them back," Voss said, her voice tinged with awe. "The Drazik are retreating from the forward line." Drayton nodded, though her expression remained grim. "For now. But they won't give up that easily." Her words proved prophetic. A warning klaxon blared across the bridge, and Voss's console lit up with alerts. New energy signatures detected, more Drazik reinforcements inbound, multiple capital ships, and something else. Drayton frowned. "Define something else." "I'm not sure," Voss admitted, her fingers flying over the controls. "The energy readings are off the charts. Whatever it is, it's massive." Back on the Armada's flagship, Marcus felt the shift in the battle. The new arrivals were unlike anything he'd encountered before. Through the Armada's sensors, he saw the Drazik reinforcements, a fleet of colossal warships bristling with weaponry, accompanied by a massive cylindrical structure emitting an ominous red glow. Vanguard's voice cut through the tension. "The structure is a Drazik singularity weapon. It is designed to generate a controlled black hole. If activated, it will destroy this system and everything within it." Marcus's blood ran cold. "Can we disable it?" "The structure is heavily shielded. Conventional weapons will be ineffective." "Then what do you suggest?" Marcus asked, his tone sharp. "A coordinated assault using Armada resources. However, this will require diverting energy from your fleet's defenses. Your choice, Commander. Protect your fleet or destroy the weapon." Marcus gritted his teeth. The decision was impossible, but it had to be made. Divert the energy. Target the weapon. The Armada shifted its focus, its ships forming a protective barrier around the central fleet, while others moved to engage the singularity weapon. The battle intensified, with Drazik forces launching a desperate counterattack to protect their doomsday device. "Focus all firepower on that structure," Marcus commanded. "Take it out before it can activate." The fleet's combined assault bore down on the singularity weapon, but the Drazik fought with a ferocity born of desperation. On the resolute vanguard, Drayton coordinated the fleet's efforts, her voice ringing out over the comms. "Hold the line! We can't let them through," Voss shouted an update. "Shields at 30%. "We're not going to last much longer." Drayton didn't waver. "Then we'll go down fighting. Redirect all available power to the forward batteries. Give them everything we've got." On the Armada's flagship, Marcus felt the strain of the battle through his connection to the ships. The singularity weapon's shields were failing, but so was his fleet's cohesion. He issued rapid commands, trying to balance offense and defense, but the pressure was immense. Finally, Vanguard's voice broke through the chaos. "Shields on the target are failing. One final strike will destroy it." Marcus took a deep breath. "Do it." The Armada's main warships fired simultaneously, their combined energy beams striking the singularity weapon. The structure erupted in a brilliant explosion, its fiery remnants scattering across the void. The neutron star's gravity pulled the debris into its core, ensuring it could never be used again. The Drazik fleet, now leaderless and in disarray, began to retreat. The battle was won, but the cost was heavy. As the battlefield quieted, Marcus disconnected from the Armada, his body sagging with exhaustion. Vanguard's holographic form loomed over him. "You have proven worthy, Commander, but know this. Power demands responsibility. Use it wisely." Marcus met its gaze, his voice steady despite his weariness. "I will." Back on the resolute vanguard, cheers erupted as the crew realized the Drazik had retreated. Drayton allowed herself a rare smile, though her eyes reflected the losses they had suffered. Marcus's voice came through the comms, quieter now but resolute. The Drazik are gone. Regroup the fleet. Let's bring our people home. The Black Armada had awakened, and the galaxy would never forget the power humanity had unleashed that day. But Marcus knew the real challenge was just beginning, ensuring that power was wielded with the restraint and responsibility it demanded. The Drazik Horde's remnants fled the battlefield, leaving behind the wreckage of their once mighty fleet. Yet even in retreat their shadow lingered. The neutron star system, which had borne witness to humanity's awakening of the Black Armada, was now quiet save for the faint hum of damaged ships regrouping and the shimmering presence of the Armada itself. Commander Marcus Hale stood aboard the central vessel of the Armada, the flagship Erebus, its name aptly carved into its hull like a warning. The control chamber pulsed with faint energy, and the holographic form of Vanguard hovered before him, its piercing eyes still locked on the human commander. The battle is over, but the consequences remain. What is your next move, Commander? Vanguard's voice carried no judgment, only a neutral curiosity that Marcus found unnerving. Marcus exhaled, exhaustion pulling at his shoulders. My next move is to stabilize the fleet, recover survivors, and prepare for the Drazik's counteroffensive. And the Armada? The Armada will return to dormancy once the immediate threat is neutralized, Marcus said firmly. Its power is a weapon of last resort, not something to parade around. Vanguard tilted its head, the glow of its eyes dimming slightly. You speak of restraint, yet you activated us to unleash devastation. Will restraint hold when the galaxy demands more? Marcus met the AI's gaze, refusing to flinch. That's my responsibility, not yours. The hologram flickered briefly, then steadied. Very well. Let us see how your leadership withstands the burden you have chosen. The connection to the AI dimmed, and Marcus turned away, his focus shifting to the holographic map of the surrounding area. The fleet was regrouping, but the toll of the battle was evident. Debris from human and Clivathian ships littered the void, and the resolute Vanguard was barely holding its position. Repairs were already underway, but they would need time, and time was a luxury Marcus wasn't sure they had. On board the resolute Vanguard, Captain Elena Drayton oversaw the recovery efforts, her hands flying over the console as she coordinated the fleet's movements. Lieutenant Nadia Voss monitored the tactical display, her expression grim. Casualty reports are coming in, Voss said quietly. We've lost 2 destroyers, 3 frigates, and over 200 personnel. The Clivathians fared even worse. Drayton's jaw tightened, but she didn't let the weight of the losses show in her voice. Focus on the survivors. We'll mourn the dead once we're out of danger. Voss nodded, though the tension in her shoulders didn't ease. And the Drazik? No signs of reinforcement so far, but they're not gone for good. They'll be back, Drayton said, her tone grim. And when they come, they'll come with everything they've got. We need to be ready. Marcus returned to the resolute Vanguard a short while later, stepping onto the bridge with measured calm. The sight of his crew working tirelessly was a small comfort, though the strain on their faces was clear. He approached the tactical console, where Voss and Drayton were deep in discussion. Status? He asked, his voice cutting through the low hum of activity. Drayton turned to him, her expression steady but weary. Fleet's regrouping, but we're in bad shape. Shields are still compromised on most ships, and we're low on ammunition and resources. Repairs are underway, but it's going to take time. Marcus nodded, his mind racing. What about the Armada? Fully operational, Voss replied. Its ships sustained minimal damage, and their firepower is unmatched. Whatever tech they're using, it's leagues beyond anything we've ever seen. That's the problem, Marcus said, his tone sharp. The more we rely on the Armada, the more we risk losing sight of what makes us human. We can't let it define us. Drayton raised an eyebrow. With all due respect, Commander, the Armada just saved us. Without it, we'd be dead, and so would the Clivathians. I know, Marcus admitted, but it's not just a weapon. It's a responsibility. One wrong move, and it could do as much damage as the Drazik. Drayton didn't argue, though her expression was skeptical. Marcus turned back to the display, his gaze fixed on the shifting patterns of the Armada's formation. Send a message to the Alliance Council, he said. They need to know what happened here. And what exactly do we tell them? Drayton asked. That we found an ancient fleet of warships capable of annihilating entire systems? Marcus's jaw tightened. We tell them the truth. They deserve to know what we've unleashed. The message to the Alliance Council was sent, though Marcus knew the response wouldn't be immediate. For now, his focus was on ensuring the fleet's survival. As the recovery efforts continued, he convened a meeting with his senior officers and Admiral Thrin aboard the Resolute Vanguard. Thrin's sharp gaze swept over the gathered officers as she addressed Marcus. The Drazik will regroup. They always do. And when they come back, they'll bring reinforcements. We'll be ready, Marcus replied, his tone firm.
Will we? Thrin countered. Your fleet is battered, your resources depleted, and your alliance is fracturing under the weight of this war. If you think the Black Armada alone will save us, you're deluding yourself. Marcus's expression hardened. The Armada isn't a solution. It's a tool. And like any tool, it's only as effective as the one who wields it. Thrin studied him for a moment before nodding. Then you'd better hope you're the right person for the job. Hours later, Marcus found himself alone in his quarters, staring out at the stars. The weight of the day pressed heavily on him, and for the first time in years, he allowed himself to feel the exhaustion that had been building inside him. The door chimed softly, and he turned to see Drayton step inside. She hesitated for a moment before speaking. "You've got that look again," she said, her tone light but laced with concern. "What look?" Marcus asked, though he already knew the answer. "The one that says you're carrying the weight of the galaxy on your shoulders." Marcus sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Maybe because I am." Drayton stepped closer, her expression softening. "You're not alone in this, Marcus. We all believe in you. And as much as I hate to admit it, the Armada believes in you too." Marcus allowed himself a faint smile. "That's what worries me." Drayton placed a hand on his shoulder, her grip firm. "We'll figure it out, together." As she left, Marcus turned back to the viewport, his resolve hardening. The Drazik were still out there, and the Alliance's trust in humanity was fragile. The Black Armada was a force unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen, but it was also a test of humanity's ability to wield power responsibly, and Marcus would ensure they passed that test. Failure wasn't an option. The fleet, battered but resolute, drifted in the aftermath of the battle. The Black Armada loomed nearby, its dark forms casting long shadows against the stars. Repairs were underway, but the strain on the remaining ships and their crews was evident. Inside the command center of the Resolute Vanguard, Commander Marcus Hale and his senior officers gathered around a holographic projection of the galaxy, the scars of the recent battle still fresh on their faces. Lieutenant Nadia Voss spoke first, her voice steady but tense. "We've intercepted Drazik transmissions. They're regrouping at the far edge of the system. Intel suggests they're preparing for a counteroffensive." Marcus nodded, his gaze fixed on the map. "How long do we have?" "Best estimate, 48 hours, Voss replied. "But that's if they don't accelerate their timeline." Admiral Thrin, standing at the edge of the room, crossed her arms. Her sharp reptilian features were tense. "You've dealt them a severe blow, but the Drazik won't stay down for long. They'll come back stronger and more desperate." Captain Elena Drayton, seated to Marcus's left, leaned forward. "We barely survived the last engagement. If the Drazik bring their full forces, we won't stand a chance." "We have the Armada," Marcus said, his voice calm but firm, "and they know it. That's why they'll be more careful this time. They'll target our weaknesses, not just our fleet." Thrin's amber eyes narrowed. "The question is, can you control the Armada when the time comes, or will it control you?" The room fell silent, the weight of her words settling over the group. Marcus met her gaze, his expression unwavering. "That's my burden, Admiral, and I'll bear it." As the fleet prepared for the inevitable counterattack, Marcus spent hours poring over reports, strategizing and coordinating efforts with his officers. Supplies were redistributed, damaged ships reinforced, and the Armada's capabilities further analyzed. Despite the pressure, the crew worked with a sense of purpose, their belief in their commander and the Armada's power giving them strength, but not everyone shared their optimism.
In the quiet confines of the Armada's flagship, Erebus, Marcus once again stood before the AI Vanguard. The holographic figure observed him silently for a long moment before speaking. "Your fleet is weak. Your enemies are stronger. The Armada can guarantee victory if you allow it." Marcus frowned. "What are you suggesting?" "Full deployment of our capabilities. No restraint, no limitations. The Drazik will be annihilated." Marcus shook his head. "I've told you before, that's not an option. We're not here to destroy for the sake of destruction." Vanguard tilted its head, the glow of its eyes intensifying. "Your restraint will cost lives. Every decision you make increases the risk of failure." "Then I'll carry that responsibility," Marcus said, his voice steady. "We fight to protect, not to conquer. And if you can't understand that, then you're no better than the Drazik." The AI paused, its form flickering slightly. "Very well, your choice. But know this: responsibility does not shield you from consequences." Marcus turned away, the conversation lingering in his mind. He knew the Armada's power was a double-edged sword, and every choice he made would define humanity's future. But there was no turning back now. The next day, the Drazik forces made their move. Alarms blared across the fleet as long-range sensors detected the incoming fleet, larger and more coordinated than before. The Drazik had learned from their previous defeat, and this time they brought enough firepower to obliterate the remnants of the Earth-Clivathian fleet. On the bridge of the resolute Vanguard, Marcus issued commands with practiced efficiency. "Form up defensive lines around the Armada. Keep their smaller ships at bay and prevent them from breaching our formation." Drayton relayed his orders, her voice calm despite the tension. "All ships, maintain defensive positions. Do not let them isolate the Armada." Voss monitored the tactical display, her fingers flying over the console. "Incoming fighters on all vectors. They're focusing on our flanks." "Redirect support vessels to cover the gaps," Marcus said, "and get me a firing solution for their capital ships." The battle erupted with terrifying intensity. The Drazik swarmed the fleet, their sleek, insectoid ships moving with deadly precision. Plasma fire lit up the void as the Earth and Clivathian forces fought to hold the line. The Armada, with its overwhelming firepower, unleashed devastating salvos, carving through the Drazik ranks with ruthless efficiency. But the Drazik weren't just targeting ships, they were targeting morale. On the bridge, Voss's console lit up with warnings. "Commander, the Drazik are broadcasting on open channels. Psychological warfare tactics." The comms crackled to life, and a chilling voice filled the air. "Humans, Clivathians, you cannot win. Surrender now, and we may show mercy." Marcus leaned toward the comms, his voice cutting through the broadcast like steel. "This is Commander Marcus Hale of the United Earth Fleet. We don't surrender, and we don't forgive." The Drazik's voice faltered, and Marcus cut the channel. "Let's show them why." As the battle raged on, the Armada's capabilities continued to shift the tide in humanity's favor. But the Drazik weren't without their own strategies. One of their capital ships broke through the defensive line, its weapons targeting the Erebus. Explosions rocked the ship, and Marcus felt the impact through his connection to the Armada. "Vanguard!" Marcus said, his voice sharp. "Status report. Shields holding, but damage is significant. Recommend full retaliation." "Not yet," Marcus said. "Focus on disabling their engines and weapons. We're not here to destroy them outright." The AI paused before responding. "Your decision is irrational. Mercy is a luxury you cannot afford." "Just do it," Marcus snapped. "That's an order." The Erebus retaliated with precision strikes, disabling the Drazik ship without obliterating it. The move left the enemy vulnerable, forcing their remaining forces to reconsider their advance. But the cost of restraint was clear. Time and resources they couldn't spare. Hours later, the battle reached its climax. The Drazik forces were routed, their ships retreating in disarray. The fleet had held, but the toll was heavy. The Clivathians had suffered severe losses, and several Earth ships were now nothing more than debris floating in the void. On the resolute Vanguard, the bridge erupted in cheers as the last Drazik ship jumped to hyperspace. Drayton turned to Marcus, her expression a mix of relief and exhaustion. "We did it." Marcus nodded. though his expression remained somber. "This isn't the end. The Drazik will regroup, and next time they'll be even more prepared." Drayton frowned. "So, what do we do?" Marcus's gaze shifted to the Armada, its dark form still looming in the distance. "We use this time to prepare, to rebuild, and to remind the galaxy that humanity isn't just a force to be feared, but one to be respected." He turned to Voss. "Send a message to the Alliance Council. Let them know what happened here, and that the Black Armada stands with us." As the fleet began the slow process of recovery, Marcus allowed himself a moment of reflection. The Drazik had been defeated, but the cost of victory was steep. The Armada had proven its power, but it had also raised new questions about humanity's future. For now, the galaxy had witnessed what humanity could achieve when pushed to the brink, and Marcus vowed to ensure that the legacy of the Black Armada would be one of hope, not fear. The void of space over the neutron star system was quieter now, though the remnants of battle lingered in the form of drifting debris and the faint scars of plasma fire etched into the surrounding ships. The United Earth Fleet and their Clevathian allies floated in formation, battered but victorious. In the center of it all, the Black Armada loomed like silent sentinels, their dark hulls shimmering faintly against the backdrop of stars. Commander Marcus Hale stood on the bridge of the resolute Vanguard, his face illuminated by the soft glow of the tactical display. The cheers of victory had faded hours ago, replaced by the sobering reality of their losses. Around him, the bridge crew worked tirelessly to assess damages and regroup, their movements quieter than usual. Lieutenant Nadia Voss broke the silence, her voice subdued. "Commander, casualty reports are finalized. We've lost over 30% of our combined forces. The Clevathians, they're down to less than half their fleet." Marcus nodded grimly, his expression unreadable. "Acknowledged. What about civilian losses?" "Minimal," Voss replied. "Most of the Clevathian survivors were successfully evacuated before the final engagement." "Small victories," Marcus muttered. He turned to Captain Elena Drayton, who stood nearby, her arms crossed. "And the Armada?" "Fully operational," she said. "Their ships barely took a scratch. Whatever technology they're using, it's leagues beyond anything we've seen." "That's what worries me," Marcus said quietly. Later, Marcus convened a final meeting with his senior officers and Admiral Thrin. The war room aboard the resolute Vanguard was filled with the weight of their collective exhaustion, but there was also a sense of determination in the air. Thrin, her sharp amber eyes scanning the room, spoke first. "The Drazik have retreated for now, but this victory doesn't end the war. They'll regroup, and they'll come back stronger." "They always do," Marcus replied, his tone steady. "But this time, we've shown them that we won't be easy prey." Thrin tilted her head, a flicker of respect crossing her features. "You've proven humanity's strength today, Commander. Even I doubted whether you could control the Black Armada, but you've exceeded my expectations." Marcus nodded but didn't allow himself to feel pride. "The Armada is a weapon, nothing more. And like any weapon, it's only as dangerous as the person wielding it." Drayton leaned forward, her voice cutting through the room. "But how do we make sure it stays that way? The Drazik aren't the only ones who will take notice. The Alliance Council will want answers, and I doubt they'll all be comfortable with humanity holding this kind of power." Marcus sighed, running a hand through his hair. "We tell the truth. We show them that the Armada is under control, that it's not just a tool for war, but a symbol of our commitment to protect, not dominate." Thrin raised an eyebrow. "And if they don't believe you?" "Then we'll prove it through our actions," Marcus said. "We didn't awaken the Armada to conquer. We awakened it to survive. That's the message we need to send." Hours later, Marcus found himself aboard the flagship of the Black Armada, the Erebus. The ship's command chamber was dimly lit, the faint hum of its systems filling the silence. The holographic form of Vanguard appeared before him, its glowing eyes fixed on the human commander. "You have won the battle, but the war continues. What is your intent?" Vanguard's voice was as resonant as ever, but there was a subtle shift in its tone, almost as if it were curious. Marcus took a deep breath. My intent is to use the Armada as a shield, not a sword. We'll fight when we have to, but we won't let this power turn us into the very thing we're fighting against. Your restraint is commendable, Vanguard said, though its tone was still unreadable. But power demands responsibility. Every decision you make will be judged. I'm aware, Marcus said, and I accept that responsibility. But I need to know, will the Armada follow me? Vanguard's eyes glowed brighter. We exist to serve purpose. Your leadership has shown worthiness. For now, you command us. But know this. Loyalty must be earned. Marcus met its gaze, his voice steady. Then I'll keep earning it. The hologram flickered for a moment before disappearing, leaving Marcus alone in the chamber. He exhaled slowly, the weight of the moment pressing heavily on him. The Armada was an ally, but it was also a test, one that he couldn't afford to fail. The Alliance Council convened days later, their holographic forms appearing in the council chamber aboard the Resolute Vanguard. Marcus stood at the center, flanked by Admiral Thrin and Captain Drayton. The councilors' expressions ranged from cautious curiosity to outright suspicion. Councilor Ixthar, his insectoid form shimmering faintly, spoke first. Commander Hale, your report has been enlightening. The existence of the Black Armada changes everything. Agreed, said Riesel, the Serpentine counselor. Humanity now wields a power that could rival the Drazik, or worse. Marcus held his ground, his voice calm but firm. The Armada is not a threat to the Alliance. It's a tool, a last resort to protect us all from annihilation. Ixthar's multifaceted eyes narrowed. And how can we trust that humanity won't use this power for its own gain? Thrin stepped forward, her voice cutting through the tension. Because they've already proven they won't. I fought alongside Commander Hale. I saw how he wielded the Armada, not with reckless abandon but with restraint. Humanity's actions speak louder than your fears. The council murmured among themselves, their holograms flickering as they exchanged private discussions. Finally, Ixthar turned back to Marcus. The Alliance will allow humanity to retain control of the Black Armada, he said slowly. But understand this. Any misuse of its power will result in consequences for your entire species. Marcus nodded. Understood. And I give you my word. We will not misuse this responsibility. After the council meeting, Marcus stood on the observation deck of the Resolute Vanguard, staring out at the Armada. Its ships floated silently, their dark forms a stark reminder of the burden he now carried. Drayton joined him, her expression softer than usual. You did it. You convinced them. For now, Marcus said. But this isn't over. The Drazik are still out there, and the galaxy is watching us. She placed a hand on his shoulder. And we'll show them what humanity is capable of, strength tempered by compassion, leadership defined by unity. Marcus nodded, a faint smile tugging at his lips. Let's hope they're ready for it. As the fleet prepared to move on, Marcus allowed himself a moment of quiet reflection. The Black Armada was awake, and the galaxy would never be the same. But for now, there was hope, a hope that humanity's legacy would not be one of fear, but of resilience and unity. The battle was over, but the journey was just beginning, and Marcus Hale was ready to lead.